last shows. And I said, boy, we've come a long way since that.
October 25th, 2024 of the Trump and Rogan discussion is a pivotal point for the emergence of sci-fi world, for the visibility of the emergence of sci-fi world. It's emerging all around us.
What if I told you the next major global event might already be written in the collective unconscious, just waiting to unfold? And what if the trigger could be something as simple as Donald Trump sitting down with Joe Rogan? Clif High, the internet's self-proclaimed oracle, predicts something massive could happen just 39 days after that interview. But how does he know this? And how accurate are his bold predictions? Stick around, because we're unpacking Clif High's incredible forecasting method, his hits, his misses, and this mysterious 39-day timeline. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. Welcome to Insight. Clif High isn't your average futurist. A computer programmer by trade, Clif developed the WebBot project in the late 1990s. Originally, the project was designed to forecast stock market trends, but soon, Clif discovered something incredible: patterns in online language that seem to predict not just financial movements, but major global events.
I guess let's just get started with who you are and what are you about?
Well, now I'm an old guy, and I'm about discovering my next leg of my journey here, because I had been doing software that I called Predictive Linguistics, and developed that in the late 90s. Ran it for 20 plus years, and then the generalized censorship of the internet slammed me down, because I needed free and unfettered language in order to capture prescient bits of future forecasts that were out there. I wasn't 100% accurate, but over the years I got to the point where I was better than chance. I was at least half of the forecasts actually ended up happening within the time frame allocated, and a lot of them happened outside of that time frame. So,
Yes.
Yeah, so it was a very decent process.
So basically, you were able to analyze our conversations, forums, chats, texts, threads, websites, data, anywhere humans were congregating and having episodes of conversating back and forth with each other, and you were able to develop a software to analyze and sort all of that?
It goes beyond that, because that was the first part of the process, was to sort and store it, because I discovered a curious thing in the beginning parts of the internet, that the nature of language could be categorized many different ways, but one way in looking at it produced an effect that seemed to forecast future events. Okay, I was just noodling around with this stuff in a language called Prolog, which is a very unique kind of a software compiling language. And I came across some data, and I started playing with it and discovered that I thought I was seeing a forecast for an event. And so I had this idea in 1993. It took me 7 years to write all of the program, because I had to go out and earn a living at the same time that I was developing all of this stuff. And then I ran this big test, and it came up with a prediction that something giant was going to happen. The thing that was going to happen was going to affect the United States and the rest of the world. It would happen within the next 85 days, and it would change all of our lives forever. It would be violent, and it would involve a military accident. And the way in which the military accident word came up, it told me that this was a machine-supplied placeholder as close as it could get for some other language that had yet to be coded.
Right.
Well, within that 85-day window, 9/11 happened. So I forecast this on the internet in like July 12th maybe, or something,
Right.
Okay, of that year, and said within the next 85 days. But because of the way that I calculated something, I thought it was going to happen, more likely to happen closer to July 12th. But it was just because I had a plus and a minus sign swapped out in my code, because it actually, if I swapped those out and had them correct at the time, it would have showed me that it was much more likely to happen within the last 15 days or so of that 85-day window rather than the first. So it was amazingly prescient and very accurate. But I didn't have terrorism coded. because I was working off of this dictionary, I could only manually code the emotional aspects of language in each and every word as I went along it. And it was just taking forever because I had over 1 million words to do. I didn't start off with 1 million words. That grew over time. But I mean, initially I had a digital copy of the Oxford English Dictionary that a friend of mine who was working for them at the time sent to me. And I stripped off all of the definitions and stuff and just had the lexicon and worked off of that.
That's amazing.
And so I made that prediction, and instantly things went all squirrely on me because everybody started talking about the prediction and the 9/11 happening together. So the next time I ran a data gathering exercise, it didn't work because of so much of my own stuff being involved.
Regurgitated back because everyone's talking about what it was. Yeah.
The circuitous reference, right? It's like, you're sitting there composing music, and it sounds great, everything's working, but there's this vague feeling, and you just don't know what it is. And then when you're done, you think, oh, damn, I just composed the theme to such and such sitcom.
Kryptonesia. Yeah, Kryptonesia crept in on you.
Exactly. Kryptonesia, right? And so it's a case of it's the knowledge is hidden even from you.
Yes.
And so it was a case of running into that. Now, the premise that this operates on is that language can be an effective encoder of emotion. This is how we actually, most of the way in which humans communicate emotion to and from is facial. Okay. Right. 68% of the communication is nonverbal. But of the verbal part of it, it can be a very effective communicator for emotion. And so what I did was to quantify that in my own squirrely way with numbers relative to emotions, and tacking them onto words. And then I found that some words change their emotions very rapidly for no known reason. Okay. And I characterized that as psychic impressions in us leaking out in making us search for new language. All right.
Got it.
And so here's the thing. At the time I was a school kid, it was expected that a normal English school kid that got all the way through high school and didn't flunk out would have a vocabulary where they would have been exposed to about over 100,000 English language words. All right. So they would sort of know about 100,000 of these words. But out of that, maybe they would only in their lives really use 35,000. And out of that 35,000, depending on the nature of their job, maybe in any given week, they're really only using 2,000 or 3,000 words because they're talking about the same shit over and over and over again, right?
Yes.
When you're selling shoes, you're just talking about shoes. So you get to the point where, for some reason, that shoe salesman, on the same forum that he's on every other day, talking about his ordinary, mundane Instagram kind of things, all of a sudden has to reach in his mind for a word that is way the hell out of those 2,000 words he normally uses in any given week.
Right.
And that word, and he's not even really sure he's using it right, but he feels compelled to put it in there for some reason. And that's how words become prescient, because he's got some emotion within him. He's feeling it in such a way, but he doesn't have an adequate understanding of what he's feeling or why it's necessary for him to get that feeling out.
Yes.
And it's this psychic impression. And we have impressions that go all the way back to us being primitives running on the beach from predators, right? And you know that the hair on the back of your neck stands up when you're in danger, when your body is telling you this stuff. And so it's that hair on the back of the neck kind of stuff creeping through in universe that affects the language we decide to use at any given moment. And most of us are totally unconscious in that regard. And so that unconscious language change was what I was trying to grab out of all of this stuff on the internet. Make sense?
Clif's system scans the internet for emotionally charged keywords, claiming that these words reveal glimpses of the future through what he calls predictive linguistics. Think of it as a digital crystal ball powered by the collective unconscious. Over the years, Clif High has made some shocking calls. He accurately predicted the 2008 financial crisis and Bitcoin's meteoric rise, warning about its significance as early as 2011. In fact, he famously predicted Bitcoin hitting $20,000 in 2017, spot on at $19,783. However, not all of Clif's predictions have landed. While he foresaw significant shifts in 2012, his forecast of apocalyptic events missed the mark. Still, his track record, estimated at about 55 to 60% accuracy, keeps people intrigued. Clif High's method is as fascinating as it is complex. His webbot scours billions of online conversations, forums, and social media posts, searching for emotionally charged language. Clif believes this data taps into humanity's collective unconscious, where we unknowingly hint at future events. This concept, while controversial, aligns with certain psychological theories. Just think about how trending topics on social media can act as precursors to significant societal changes. Clif's latest prediction has the internet buzzing. He claims that Donald Trump's recent appearance on Joe Rogan's podcast acts as a temporal marker.
Original temporal marker data set, there was this stuff, and Igor, the reason it really stuck out in his mind was because he and I fought about it for so much. Well, not fought about it, but argued over the how it would have to be interpreted, okay? Because I use a strict denotation, a strict interpretation of a word based on its absolute definition, in terms of correct grammar and so on. So, what we ended up doing was doing it my way. I was paying the freight. But the word was melee, okay, M-E-L-E-E. This is a word that is basically military in origin in terms of its use in the English language. Melee has a very specific meaning, okay? So a melee is not just a bunch of guys standing up and flinging and fighting, right? So it's not a big knockdown, drag-out brawl in a tavern or something. People have put the word to it, but that's not accurate, okay? It is a military term. A melee is when an organized act of warfare, an organized combat activity degenerates into what we think of as like a basic brawl. Every person for themselves, any weapon at hand, totally disorganized, completely disorganized, last man standing wins kind of thing, right? Or fight your way out to survive kind of thing. So Igor and I, he wanted to make melee temporally show up over here in terms of its representational, or in terms of its input on our temporal range, okay? In melee, there's a lot of words that basically are describing a condition that existed prior to this word manifesting into our reality, right? So there could be a huge amount of fighting, and then it degenerates into a melee. So you can't say that, the melee part is the beginning of anything. The melee is actually the end. It's the degradation of the fighting situation. After the Joe Rogan interview, in our data back in 2009, and it was confirmed before, and it was one of the reasons I did it, it was confirmed before before I commissioned the remote viewing guys to have a look, right? I wanted confirmation of what we were seeing. I mean, I don't follow politics. At the time that all this was going on in 2009, Trump was not even a figure in any of this. And Joe Rogan was, but he wasn't like a big major thing, right? So I didn't have any hooks and any personalities involved. It was just two cutouts, just two placeholders, two variables for me. What turned out to be a podcaster and a president of the United States that were just going to blow the whole thing wide open. The reason that this is the case is because that TM had a lot to do with the UFO discussion, right? And the secret technology and all of this kind of shit. That's why in the data sets, it became such a standout, such a iconic temporal marker, was because it appears just ahead of sci-fi world starting to manifest. And it is such that 100 years from now, people can go back and look at this video, look at the interview itself, and know that that was the absolute threshold being crossed as we move into sci-fi world. Okay, so that's set up aside. So I'm talking with Igor, and he reminded me this, and to be honest, I'd totally spaced on it. But that was the reason that I had contacted Dick Allgeier and his remote viewing guys, was because we'd had that melee thing back in 2009, and in 2000 and I think probably about 2015 maybe it started really picking up again, and I'll describe that in a second. And so I was prompted to get hold of Dick Allgeier as like sort of a sanity check on what I was seeing. Anyway, and so we had this situation within the data in 2009 that had been reinforced over the years from 2009 through to 2015 that said that 39 days after this TM took place, we would have the big, and this is where Igor and I did our fighting, we would have this visible contention that would dissolve into a melee. And at the time, and even in our even in our conversations here recently, he wanted to say, and I'll title this way in honor of Igor here, but he wanted to say that it was 39 days to melee, which is a catchy phrase. Okay, it'd be a nice title for a book or something. But in my opinion, it's not quite accurate, right? Because we don't know what the distance is between the organized visible contention that then degrades into the melee. That might be months for all we know. But what we do have some justification for suggesting is that there will be 39 days between the temporal marker of the Trump interview and the appearance of this visible contention. And we're not talking, people taking on migrant gangs that are taking over apartment buildings. That kind of visible contention may well be in there, but the stuff that had been motivating me to get hold of Dick Allgeier was the visible contention between space aliens. Okay, so, or whatever, right? Alien reproduction vehicles or whatever the hell. Who knows what's going on? Because we can't validate any of it at this point, right? Now we've got that same set of linguistics again, and apparently we have confirmation that the interview will take place, and therefore we'll have it as a temporal marker itself. And so that sets going a sort of a timer. Bear in mind what I was telling you about how we get these times, right? It's software adding up all of this shit based on all these words, and we're constantly wrong to some great degree. And it varies based on the size of the set, the amount of processing it takes, and yada, yada, yada. So it's not like any kind of guaranteed date or anything, right? It is just, I am alluding to the possibility that there's a short period of time between the, barely over a month, between the temporal marker and the visible contention that will appear in the skies that from the descriptors we had back in 2009 will go to the idea of UFO versus UFO and UFO versus jets. Okay, so like sort of very complex kind of Independence Day kind of shit, right? Nobody will know who the hell is doing what with whom. Now, okay, so you think that's unlikely and so on, as do I. All this shit's always unlikely until it happens. Possible, not probable, right? So anyway, now we have a strange thing where there's swarms of 20-foot drones flying around military bases. So unknown. Nobody knows who owns these drones, who's controlling them. At least they're not telling us guys. I would suspect that the military would be freaking out if they can't see the signals that are directing those drones.
According to Clif, this marker sets the stage for major global or societal events to unfold 39 days later. But what does that mean? Clif theorizes that certain events or media interactions trigger ripple effects in our collective consciousness, aligning with his predictive models. While he hasn't specified exactly what will happen after 39 days, his followers speculate about everything from political upheaval to economic shifts. Regardless of what unfolds, the idea has captured the attention of millions, especially those who believe in Clif's predictive linguistics. Clif High has a history of tying key figures to his forecasts. Back in 2016, he predicted Donald Trump's rise as a symbol of global upheaval. Today, he suggests Trump's influence will continue shaping world events. And Joe Rogan. Clif believes Rogan's role in bridging traditional media and alternative platforms makes him a cultural linchpin. Could their recent conversations spark a turning point in the collective consciousness? Only time will tell. Clif High's work isn't just about predictions, it's about how interconnected we all are. Whether you believe in predictive linguistics or not, his ideas challenge us to think deeply about the ripple effects of our digital age. So, what do you think? Will Clif High's 39-day prediction come true? Or is this just another piece of internet lore? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. Because if Clif is right, the future might already be here.